Yes.
Earlier, you made an excellent delineation between laboratory-produced drugs and botanicals. The question is, are the effects of each of these two different on subtle bodies of people?
Well, something more that I could have said about that, a very practical argument for botanical drugs, especially ones with a history of shamanic usage, is simply that they have a history of human usage. That's where the market testing was done over thousands and thousands of years. If a compound is toxic or triggers psychosis or mutagenic or induces tumors, it will have been dropped long ago by human groups who experiment with these things. Something can come out of the laboratory and be psychoactive, elicit some change in the self-perception of psyche, and can have all kinds of unknown or potential side effects. So what I always say to people, if I can reconstruct it here, who ask this kind of a question is, there are 3 tests to apply to a compound that you're thinking of ingesting. First of all, does it have a history of shamanic usage? Does it come from plants? Plants are also biological systems like us. They cannot produce truly alien compounds. And thirdly, does it have a relationship to known human brain chemistry? And I usually say to people, if you get 2 out of 3 on this test, it's probably okay to go ahead. But if it fails 2 of the 3 or 3 of the 3, I would steer wide of it. A perfect example, I mean, I don't want to dump on anybody's favorite drug, but just because I'm familiar with the literature, let me give an example. Ketamine. Ketamine is a fascinating experience. I had a lot of psychedelic experience under my belt before I came to ketamine, and I was amazed at what it does to psyche. However, there's a significant amount of literature which indicates that it can cause epileptic kindling. There is another significant body of literature which indicates that it depresses the immune system to such a degree that it has now been dropped from general surgery. It's even, I understand, being dropped from veterinary use because all these vets were reporting that a very large percentage of cat patients were not recovering from quite straightforward operations, being spayed and that sort of thing. And ketamine begins to look like the culprit in that. Well, now, if it didn't have that bad rap, I would be willing to grant that it was a very interesting compound. But I just, my immune system is very precious to me, and also I find the notion of epileptic kindling to make me very uncomfortable. So in spite of the fact that the experience is quite interesting, I would go very slow with that. I certainly wouldn't settle into it as a lifestyle. So just to reiterate, does it come from a plant? That means that it is benign to life. Does it have a history of shamanic usage? That means that it is benign to human populations. And then this third thing, does it have an affinity with brain chemistry? Because you see, the brain views a drug as an insult to it. The brain has what is called the blood-brain barrier, and then behind that many enzymatic mechanisms for degrading any foreign substance and turning it into harmless substrates. The perfect case example would be dimethyltryptamine. Dimethyltryptamine is, without contest, the most powerful hallucinogen known to me, and I've spent a while looking into the matter. Okay, it does occur in plants. It does have a history of human usage in the Amazon basin, but what is most astonishing about it is when you smoke it, within 7 to 12 minutes, you completely return to normal. Now, what is happening there is that the DMT is crossing the blood-brain barrier very rapidly, giving you a phenomenal psychedelic experience, and enzyme systems are locking on to these molecules and saying, I know what this is. I know how to deanimate, dealkylate this compound and quickly turn it into indole acetic acid, which is a common excretory pathway for these kinds of compounds in the brain. So the speed with which DMT clears the human brain and returns you to normal is a very, very strong argument for its harmlessness. So if you take a drug and the next day you feel lousy and the next day you sort of feel okay, that's not a very good drug. That's an insult to the physical brain, and should not be done, because we're in this for the duration. This is a task of a lifetime. So you want compounds which are extremely effective in delivering the noetic experience, the plunge into the tremendum, but you also want to be able to race again another day, and that involves paying attention to these other factors. People who are contemplating this as an experiment or a lifestyle, this dealing with psychedelics as a growth program, the first thing I say to people is make a trip to the library. A great deal is known about these things. Read the physiological literature, read the ethnographic literature, and assimilate that data so that you're not just going into it blind. Take a little responsibility for what you're doing. I'm appalled at people who take 8 different kinds of drugs in an evening and tell me they have astonishing experiences. I'll bet they do. But that's not for the duration. You can't build a lifestyle on that kind of thing. What you want to do is have access into the dimension in a way that is clean and informed and ethical and intelligent. That's how these shamans in the Amazon do it. I was tremendously impressed by their authenticity and by their awareness of these issues. These people are not naive, as so much of the ethnographic literature insists. They are extremely sophisticated, obviously, in these matters, more sophisticated than we are. We have much to learn from them. That's why visionary and ecstatic shamanism is the model for doing this kind of exploratory work, sir.